Richard Engelbert, a prominent real estate agent in Littleton, Colorado, led a seemingly successful life, but beneath the surface lay a web of secrets that would ultimately lead to his brutal murder. At 48 years old, Engelbert was well regarded in his professional sphere, yet his personal life was fraught with complexity and hidden turmoil. As we delve into his story, we unravel the layers of deceit, personal conflicts, and the dark side of his existence that contributed to his tragic end. Richard Engelbert's prominence in the community was highlighted by his sleek black BMW, adorned with the license plate sexy realtor which reflected both his confidence and his brand. His personal life, marked by his marriage to Wendy, a school principal, and his role as a stepfather to Harrison, seemed stable. University of Colorado business graduate, Engelbert had built a successful real estate career over 2 decades. Despite his outward success, his life was soon to reveal hidden layers that would lead to his tragic murder. Richard Engelbert was well regarded in Littleton for his friendly and reliable demeanor, traits that extended beyond his professional life. He lived in an impressive 2-story home with a meticulously maintained lawn, reflecting his attention to detail and pride in his surroundings. Neighbors frequently saw him tending to the yard, always ready with a warm smile and a friendly wave, further solidifying his reputation as a trusted and approachable member of the community. Richard Engelbert's community involvement and philanthropic efforts, such as sponsoring local Little League teams and attending church regularly, painted a picture of a well-rounded and exemplary citizen. His seemingly perfect life, with a successful career, a beautiful home, and a loving family, contributed to his positive public image. However, beneath this facade lay a secret life, hinting at underlying complexities and hidden aspects that would eventually come to light and play a crucial role in the tragic events that unfolded. Richard Engelbert's hidden life was starkly at odds with his public persona. Over the past 2 years, he had been engaged in a sexual relationship with his stepson, Harrison, a secret he kept closely guarded to avoid jeopardizing his reputation and career. Furthermore, Richard used his work in real estate as a cover for his clandestine meetings with other men, utilizing the homes he showed as discreet locations for these encounters. This double life added layers of complexity and risk, ultimately contributing to the tragic outcome of his story. The strain of managing his double life took a significant toll on Richard Engelbert. In the days leading up to his death, he was especially overwhelmed by the demands of his job. Closing deals and meeting clients kept him busy, leading to long hours at the office and late returns home. This relentless schedule and the stress of concealing his secrets likely contributed to the mounting pressure and anxiety that marked his final days. Richard Engelbert was anticipating a much-needed break from his stressful life. He looked forward to a weekend getaway to the Bahamas with his wife, Wendy, hoping to escape his troubles and find some relaxation. Additionally, he planned to attend a 4th of July barbecue at a friend's house, eager to reconnect with old friends and enjoy a respite from his hectic routine. Despite the turmoil he faced privately, his friends saw him as charismatic and charming, further underscoring the contrast between his public image and the hidden struggles he endured. Richard Engelbert had a talent for making others feel at ease and valued, a quality that endeared him to many. However, beneath his friendly exterior, he grappled with deep internal conflict and guilt. The affair with Harrison weighed heavily on him, and the deception required to keep it hidden only intensified his emotional burden. His personal turmoil was a stark contrast to the composed and affable persona he projected to those around him. In his final days, Richard Engelbert was plagued by the fear of Wendy discovering his affair with Harrison, which he believed would shatter their marriage and ruin his reputation in the community. The pressure of maintaining his public persona while hiding his private turmoil was immense. As the facade of his perfect life began to crumble, the mounting stress and guilt contributed to his tragic and violent end. His life, once seemingly flawless, ultimately unraveled under the weight of his secrets and the intense pressure they created. On June 27, 2014, at around 3 p.m., Wendy Engelbert arrived home early from her job as a school principal. Eager for a relaxing evening, she planned to unwind by watching Netflix and catching up on her favorite book. Initially, as she walked through the front door of their home on Bleak Street in Littleton, Colorado, everything appeared normal. However, the tranquility of her plans was about to be shattered by a horrifying discovery. Wendy Engelbert placed her keys on the kitchen counter and called out for Richard, but received no response. Growing slightly uneasy, she decided to check the basement, where Richard frequently worked on his real estate files or watched the History Channel. As she descended the stairs, she noticed the basement door was slightly ajar, a departure from its usual state. This unexpected detail heightened her concern as she ventured further into the basement. Wendy called Richard's name again, more urgently, but still received no answer. As she reached the bottom of the basement stairs, she was confronted with a horrifying sight. Richard's lifeless body lay sprawled on the floor, surrounded by evidence of a violent struggle. The scene was a stark and unsettling contrast to the peaceful evening she had anticipated. The basement was a grim tableau of violence. Bloodstains marred the carpet and furniture, and Richard's face was battered and bruised. A men's luxury belt was tightly wrapped around his neck, indicating he had been strangled. Overcome with terror, Wendy screamed as she rushed to Richard's side, shaking him and desperately trying to revive him. But it was clear that her efforts were in vain. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Wendy, still in shock and disbelief, fumbled for her cell phone and dialed 911. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she spoke to the operator, her voice breaking with emotion as she reported the horrifying scene she had just discovered. Wendy's voice trembled as she cried into the phone, "My husband is dead. I think he's been murdered." Her breaths came in ragged gasps, reflecting her utter shock and despair as she tried to provide the operator with the necessary details. The operator reassured Wendy, instructing her to remain on the line until the police arrived. Meanwhile, her neighbor, Luby Johnson, who had heard the commotion, came over to investigate. She found Wendy sitting on the front steps, sobbing uncontrollably, overwhelmed by the tragedy that had just unfolded. Luby stayed by Wendy's side, offering comfort and support as they waited for the police to arrive. The minutes dragged on, and Wendy's mind was consumed with questions about the identity and motives of the perpetrator. When the police finally arrived, they promptly secured the scene and escorted both Wendy and Luby away from the basement, beginning their investigation into the brutal murder. Wendy, still in a state of profound shock, struggled to grasp the reality of her husband's death. She repeatedly asked, who would do this to Richard? Her mind was overwhelmed by the brutality of the situation, unable to make sense of the horror she had just witnessed. The discovery of Richard's body sent ripples of disbelief and shock through the quiet community of Littleton, leaving residents grappling with the unsettling news. News of Richard Engelbert's murder spread rapidly through the neighborhood, with neighbors and friends gathering outside the Engelbert home, struggling to understand the tragedy that had befallen their seemingly idyllic community. At 3:15 p.m. on June 27, 2014, the Littleton Police Department received Wendy Engelbert's frantic 911 call. Officers, led by Detective James Carter, a seasoned investigator renowned for his meticulous approach, arrived at the scene within minutes to begin their investigation. The Engelbert home on Oak Street was soon surrounded by police cars, with yellow crime scene tape marking off the area. Detective James Carter and his team entered the basement and were met with a grisly sight: Richard Engelbert's body sprawled on the floor, a men's luxury belt tightly wrapped around his neck. The team began their meticulous examination of the scene, noting the violent struggle and gathering evidence to piece together the events leading to Richard's death. Blood stains marked the carpet and nearby furniture, underscoring the violence of the struggle. Detective James Carter, a sharp-eyed investigator in his late 40s known for his calm demeanor, surveyed the scene with a steely resolve. His team began the investigation by meticulously collecting evidence and documenting the crime scene, aiming to uncover the details behind the brutal murder. The detectives photographed the scene from multiple angles, capturing every detail of the crime. The belt used in the murder was carefully bagged as evidence, and the team searched for fingerprints and other potential clues that could identify the killer. Detective Carter observed the overturned furniture and signs of a struggle, noting that Richard had clearly fought for his life, which added crucial context to their investigation. Forensic experts arrived to process the scene, employing luminol to detect blood traces and collecting samples for DNA analysis. They meticulously combed the area for hair, fibers, and any other potential evidence. Despite the shockingly brutal nature of the murder, even to the most seasoned officers, the team remained focused on gathering every piece of information that could lead to uncovering the perpetrator. Detective Carter interviewed Wendy Engelbert, who remained in a state of shock from the discovery of her husband's body. She provided a detailed and emotional account of her day and the horrifying moment she found Richard. Despite her distress, Wendy insisted that she had no idea who could have committed such a brutal act, leaving the detectives with more questions than answers as they began their investigation. Wendy's alibi was promptly confirmed. She had been at work during the time of the murder. The police then began canvassing the neighborhood, interviewing neighbors to gather more information. This included speaking with Luby Johnson, who had come to Wendy's aid, hoping to find any additional clues or observations that might assist in their investigation. Luby Johnson described hearing Wendy's screams and finding her on the front steps, clearly distraught and incoherent. Other neighbors reported seeing Richard earlier in the day, but nothing unusual was noted. The police also reviewed Richard's recent phone and email records, searching for any communications or interactions that might provide clues about potential leads or motives for the murder. The police uncovered several suspicious messages and calls in Richard's phone records, revealing that he had been meeting with various men for illicit encounters. This new information introduced a potential motive related to Richard's hidden life, complicating the investigation further. As evening fell, the police remained committed to unraveling the mystery and finding the person responsible for the brutal murder of Richard Engelbert. As the crime scene was cleared, Detective Carter and his team began reviewing the collected evidence, planning the next steps in their investigation. The community of Littleton, deeply affected by the crime, awaited answers and justice for Richard Engelbert. Given the new revelations and the complexities of the case, Wendy Engelbert became the first suspect under scrutiny, prompting further investigation into her involvement in the murder. Wendy Engelbert, 47, was a well-respected school principal in Littleton, known for her intelligence and strong personality. With over 15 years in the school district and active involvement in community activities, she was seen by colleagues as dedicated and authoritative, always striving for excellence. On June 28, 2014, the day after the murder, Wendy Engelbert was brought in for questioning. Detective James Carter led the interrogation, aiming to piece together her actions and emotions surrounding the crime. Wendy, appearing exhausted and distraught, responded to questions with a calm demeanor, despite the intense emotional strain she was under. Wendy recounted her workday and the traumatic moment she discovered Richard's body upon returning home. Although she maintained a composed demeanor during the interrogation, her anger and confusion were palpable. She expressed profound disbelief and frustration upon learning about the affair, vehemently denying any knowledge of Richard's sexual involvement with other men. The revelation of Richard's affair intensified the interrogation, prompting Detective Carter to delve deeper into Wendy's emotional state regarding her husband's betrayal. When asked about her relationship with Richard, Wendy acknowledged that they had a strong partnership but conceded that they had been facing some challenges recently. Wendy maintained that she was unaware of Richard's secret life, attributing her lack of awareness to a recent ski injury that had impaired her ability to read people's actions. She suggested that this might explain why she missed any indications of Richard's double life. Her alibi was solid, further complicating the investigation as Detective Carter and his team continued to explore other leads and potential suspects. Wendy had been at the school all day, engaged in meetings and preparations for the upcoming school year. Her colleagues and security footage corroborated her presence at work during the time of the murder. Despite the solid alibi, her connection to the victim kept her as a person of interest in the investigation, prompting detectives to scrutinize her involvement more closely. Detective Carter examined potential motives, considering that Wendy's reputation and career were vital to her, and Richard's affair posed a threat to both. Despite this, Wendy steadfastly denied any involvement in the murder, maintaining her innocence throughout the questioning. Wendy was cooperative, willingly providing access to her phone and emails. The police conducted a thorough search of the Engelbert home, seeking any evidence that might connect Wendy to the crime. They found nothing incriminating, which reinforced her alibi and statements, further complicating the investigation as they continued to explore other leads. Despite the lack of incriminating evidence, detectives remained cautious, recognizing that intense emotions could potentially drive even the most rational individuals to act out of desperation. Wendy was released after several hours of questioning but remained under scrutiny as the investigation progressed. The police continued to monitor her interactions and movements while they pursued other leads in their quest for the truth. The murder of Richard Engelbert was becoming increasingly complex, with numerous layers of secrets and motives emerging. The investigation shifted focus to Harrison Engelbert, Richard's 21-year-old stepson. Harrison, a college student and part-time bartender, was known for his troubled past, making him the next suspect in the case. Harrison Engelbert had struggled with substance abuse issues during his teenage years, having been in and out of rehab and 12-step programs. Despite these challenges, he was committed to turning his life around and was studying psychology at a local community college. On June 28, 2014, Harrison was brought in for questioning as part of the ongoing investigation into Richard's murder. Detective James Cavill, aware of the sensitive nature of Harrison's relationship with Richard, approached the interrogation with caution. Harrison appeared nervous but cooperative, willing to share his side of the story. Harrison admitted to the police that he had been in a secret sexual relationship with his stepfather for the past 2 years. Harrison described feeling deeply conflicted and troubled by the deceit and secrecy surrounding his relationship with Richard. He revealed that he had recently ended the affair upon discovering that Richard had been cheating on him with numerous other men, using the homes he showed as a real estate agent as covert meeting places. During the interrogation, Harrison's emotions were a mix of anger and sadness, reflecting the turmoil and betrayal he had experienced. Harrison felt profoundly betrayed by Richard, not only because of the affair but also due to the lies and manipulation that accompanied it. Despite his resentment, Harrison insisted he had no intention of harming Richard. He provided an alibi, stating that he had been bartending on the night of the murder, and several witnesses confirmed his presence at work, corroborating his claim. Detective Carter explored Harrison's potential motives, considering his history of emotional turmoil and substance abuse. While these factors raised concerns, Harrison's recent efforts to stay sober and focus on his studies presented a different perspective. He was candid about his struggles and his desire to move past the toxic relationship with Richard, emphasizing his commitment to moving forward with his life. The police scrutinized Harrison's electronic devices and social media accounts for any evidence of his involvement in the crime. They uncovered messages between him and Richard that indicated tension and conflict, but these did not directly link him to the murder. Harrison's DNA was found at the crime scene, but given that he lived in the house, this was not unusual or conclusive evidence of his involvement. Harrison's cooperation and consistent alibi complicated the police's efforts to link him to the crime. After several hours of questioning, he was released but continued to be a key figure in the investigation. The police kept a close watch on his activities and interactions, remaining vigilant for any inconsistencies or new evidence that might reveal more about his potential involvement in the murder. The intricate dynamics between Richard and Harrison added considerable complexity to the case, leaving Detective Carter and his team with many unresolved questions. As they continued their investigation, they aimed to uncover the truth behind Richard Engelbert's brutal murder. Alexa Hernandez, 30, emerged as the third suspect in the ongoing investigation. Alexa Hernandez had a significant history with Richard Engelbert that made her a person of interest. She had discovered Richard in an intimate encounter with her husband during a house tour, which led to the dissolution of her marriage. Known for her fiery temper, Alexa had several confrontations with Richard since the incident, adding to the reasons she was considered a suspect in the case. On June 29, 2014, Detective James Carter brought Alexa Hernandez in for questioning. Working as a waitress at a popular local diner, Alexa was known for her outspoken and strong-willed nature. She entered the interrogation room with a defiant expression, prepared to assert her innocence and defend herself against any accusations. Detective Carter began by inquiring about Alexa's relationship with Richard. Alexa admitted to despising him for destroying her marriage and causing her significant emotional distress. She described the day she discovered her husband and Richard together as the worst day of her life, underscoring the deep pain and anger she felt toward Richard. Alexa had confronted Richard multiple times after the incident, seeking answers and an apology, but he had always dismissed her concerns. Regarding her whereabouts on the day of the murder, Alexa stated she had been working a double shift at Denny's. She provided the names of her co-workers who could corroborate her alibi, supporting her claim of being at work during the time of Richard's murder. Detective Carter contacted the diner and spoke with Alexa's manager, who confirmed that she had been working all day. Multiple co-workers also verified her presence during her shifts. Despite the solid alibi, Detective Carter continued to explore Alexa's possible motives, given her past grievances with Richard and the intensity of her reactions to their interactions. Despite her evident anger toward Richard, Alexa insisted that she had moved on and was focused on rebuilding her life. She mentioned taking night classes at a local community college with the goal of becoming a social worker, aiming to help others facing similar struggles. The police conducted searches of Alexa's home and car, seeking any evidence that might connect her to the crime, but no incriminating evidence was found. The police found nothing suspicious or incriminating during their searches of Alexa's home and car. Her phone records and social media activity showed no contact with Richard in the weeks leading up to the murder. Throughout the interrogation, Alexa remained calm and composed, despite her clear disdain for Richard, further complicating the investigation as detectives sought to uncover the truth. Alexa answered all questions directly and displayed no signs of guilt or deception. Detective Carter noted her cooperation and apparent honesty, but remained cautious, knowing that all possibilities had to be considered. After several hours of questioning, Alexa was released, but continued to be monitored as the investigation pursued other leads. The police continued to monitor Alexa, recognizing that her past with Richard made her a potential suspect. Despite her solid alibi and lack of direct evidence linking her to the crime, the investigation remained challenging. Each interview added layers of complexity to the case, as Detective Carter and his team worked to untangle the web of motives and relationships surrounding Richard Engelbert's murder. Detective Carter and his team were resolute in their quest for the truth. The intricate web of secrets and lies surrounding Richard's life presented a significant challenge, but they pressed on with determination. Their goal was to find the crucial piece of evidence that would ultimately reveal the identity of Richard Engelbert's K. On July 3, 2014, the investigation took a dramatic turn. The hot summer day in Littleton, with temperatures reaching the high 80s, contrasted sharply with the gravity of the news. Detective James Carter received around 10 a.m. from the forensic lab. The forensic lab discovered crucial new evidence while re-examining items from the crime scene. They found a small hidden camera disguised as a smoke detector installed in the basement. Detective Carter and his team promptly retrieved and reviewed the footage from the camera, hoping it would provide significant insights into the events leading up to Richard Engelbert's murder. The footage from the hidden camera revealed recordings of the basement's activities over the past few weeks, including Richard's secret meetings and interactions. Among the recordings, Detective Carter found a crucial video from the day of the murder. It depicted a heated argument between Richard and his stepson, Harrison Engelbert, providing new and potentially pivotal evidence in the investigation. The video footage revealed that the argument between Richard and Harrison escalated into a violent confrontation. Harrison, in a fit of rage, seized the luxury belt from a nearby chair and used it to strangle Richard. The footage captured the entire brutal incident, providing clear and undeniable evidence of Harrison's involvement in the murder. The team was taken aback by the brutality and the evident motive of anger and betrayal captured in the footage. Armed with this new evidence, Detective Carter contacted Harrison and requested he come in for further questioning. Harrison arrived at the station, unaware that the video evidence had already implicated him in the murder. During the interrogation, Detective Carter confronted Harrison with the footage. Harrison's demeanor shifted dramatically. His initial calmness gave way to panic and desperation as he watched the evidence that clearly showed his involvement in the murder. Faced with undeniable evidence, Harrison broke down and confessed to the murder. He explained that he felt trapped in his relationship with Richard and manipulated by both his stepfather and his mother, Wendy. The ongoing deceit and Richard's infidelity had driven him to his breaking point, leading to the violent confrontation that ended in Richard's death. Harrison admitted that, in a moment of uncontrollable rage, he had killed Richard to escape the suffocating situation he felt trapped in. Detective Carter meticulously documented Harrison's confession, capturing every detail of his statement. With the confession and the compelling video evidence, there was no doubt about Harrison's guilt in the murder of Richard Engelbert. On July 4, 2014, just before noon, the Littleton Police Department took decisive action. Armed with Harrison Engelbert's confession and the incriminating video evidence, Detective Carter and his team proceeded with the arrest. Harrison was charged with the murder of Richard Engelbert, bringing a significant resolution to the complex and tragic case. Harrison Engelbert, 21, a college student and part-time bartender, had been grappling with a life marked by turmoil and confusion. Despite his efforts to move past his troubled history, the emotional strain from his affair with Richard and his mother's manipulations pushed him to a breaking point. Overwhelmed by feelings of betrayal and manipulation, Harrison K. led Richard in a fit of rage, ultimately leading to his arrest and the resolution of the case. On the day of the arrest, Detective Carter and several officers arrived at Harrison's apartment. Harrison, appearing pale and exhausted, answered the door. He was promptly handcuffed and read his rights, marking the official beginning of his legal proceedings for the murder of Richard Engelbert. Harrison appeared resigned to his fate, showing little emotion as he was escorted to the police car. Although the neighborhood was quiet, a few curious onlookers observed the arrest. Back at the station, Harrison was formally charged with the murder of Richard Engelbert, setting the stage for the legal process to address the crime. In a final interview, Detective Carter documented all the details of Harrison's confession. Harrison reiterated his feelings of being trapped and manipulated by Richard and pressured by his mother, Wendy. He described how the argument had escalated into a violent confrontation, leading to the fatal attack. Harrison's account provided a detailed and coherent narrative of the events that culminated in Richard Engelbert's murder. Wendy Engelbert, Richard's wife and Harrison's mother, was brought in for questioning. The investigation had uncovered that Wendy was aware of the affair for months and had pressured Harrison to continue it. Her fear was that Richard's reckless sexual behavior could jeopardize her chances in the upcoming election for school superintendent, adding further complexity to the case. Although Wendy's deception and manipulation added complexity to the case, she was not directly involved in the murder and thus was not charged with any crime. The revelations shocked Richard's family and the community, highlighting the intricate and troubled dynamics behind the tragic event. The arrest of Harrison brought a complex mix of emotions to Richard's family and the community of Littleton. They had seen Richard as a devoted husband and father, completely unaware of his double life. The revelations led to grief over his death, anger at the betrayal, and a sense of tragic inevitability given the circumstances. The community was stunned by the news, grappling with the profound impact of the case. The murder of Richard Engelbert exposed a hidden world of secrets and lies, profoundly shaking the town of Littleton. As Harrison awaited trial, both the Engelbert family and the broader community struggled to come to terms with the shocking events. While the police had resolved the case, the emotional aftermath would linger, leaving a lasting impact on everyone involved. The trial of Harrison Engelbert began on August 15, 2014, in Littleton, Colorado. The courtroom was packed with family, friends, and local media, all eager to hear the details of the case. The trial would delve into the complexities of Richard Engelbert's life and the tragic circumstances that led to his murder, further exposing the deep emotional scars left behind. The trial drew significant attention from local and national news outlets. District Attorney Laura Mitchell, a 45-year-old known for her strong courtroom presence and dedication to justice, led the prosecution. She argued that Harrison Engelbert's murder of Richard was premeditated, driven by intense anger and a sense of betrayal. Her aim was to present a compelling case that showcased the depth of Harrison's motive and the brutality of the crime. Z. Barnes, a 40-year-old non-binary attorney with a reputation for handling high-profile cases, represented Harrison Engelbert. Barnes aimed to present a defense that highlighted Harrison's emotional turmoil and the complex, manipulative dynamics within his family. They sought to argue that while Harrison was responsible for his actions, the context of his mental and emotional state should be taken into account in determining his culpability. Z. Barnes argued that Harrison Engelbert's actions stemmed from severe emotional turmoil and manipulation by both Richard and his mother, Wendy. They highlighted Harrison's unstable mental state and the immense pressure he faced, suggesting that these factors compromised his ability to control his actions. Barnes aimed for a verdict of guilty with consideration for a lesser charge, hoping for a more lenient sentence due to the complex and challenging circumstances surrounding the case. The victim's family, including Wendy Engelbert and other relatives, were visibly distressed throughout the trial. The revelations of Richard's double life and the ensuing turmoil had deeply shaken them. As they listened to the details of the affair and the murder, their emotional reactions were evident, reflecting the profound impact of the tragic events on their lives. On September 5, 2014, the jury returned with a verdict. Harrison Engelbert was found guilty of second-degree murder. The jury concluded that although Harrison had acted out of intense rage, the killing was not premeditated. This verdict reflected the jury's view that the crime was driven by a sudden and overwhelming emotional response, rather than a planned act. The verdict elicited mixed reactions from the community. Some believed the decision was just, taking into account the emotional and psychological factors that influenced Harrison's actions. They argued that his turbulent upbringing and the complexities of his relationship with Richard played a significant role in the tragedy. Conversely, others felt the sentence was too lenient, considering the brutality of the crime and the irreversible loss of Richard Engelbert's life. This division in opinion underscored the case's complexity and the deep emotional scars it left on the community. Harrison Engelbert was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. While this sentencing provided a degree of closure to the case, the Engelbert family continued to grapple with the profound pain and trauma of Richard's death. The knowledge that the person responsible for such a brutal act was a close family member only deepened their grief, leaving them to confront the emotional and psychological aftermath of the tragedy. The trial's impact was indeed profound, bringing to light the hidden complexities of betrayal and manipulation. The community of Littleton faced the difficult task of reconciling with the disturbing truths about Richard Engelbert's life and the tragic events that followed. As they began to heal, the case served as a stark reminder of the deep-seated issues that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly perfect lives. The process of recovery for both the Engelbert family and the town was slow and challenging, as they worked to come to terms with the emotional scars left by the case. As the community of Littleton worked to recover from the trauma of the Engelbert case, the process was gradual and challenging. The brutal nature of the crime and the complexity of the relationships involved left a lasting impact on both the town and Richard's family. With Harrison Engelbert serving his sentence, the focus shifted to rebuilding trust and finding a way to move forward. The healing process involved addressing the emotional wounds inflicted by the murder and coming to terms with the darker aspects of the case that had been revealed. In prison, Harrison Engelbert's life was marked by introspection and efforts to improve himself. He engaged in educational programs and counseling, aiming to address the emotional and psychological issues that had led to his crime. His behavior was described as quiet and reserved, reflecting his ongoing struggle with the gravity of his actions and the consequences of his past. His attempts at self-improvement were part of a broader effort to find redemption and make sense of the profound impact of his actions on his life and the lives of others. The scandal surrounding Wendy Engelbert had a profound effect on her personal and professional life. The revelations about her knowledge of Richard's affair and her manipulative actions impacted her reputation and candidacy for school superintendent. Despite her efforts to distance herself from the scandal, the fallout from the trial led to increased scrutiny and challenges in her career. Wendy faced a difficult path in rebuilding her reputation and coping with the personal ramifications of the case. Wendy Engelbert's withdrawal from the superintendent race was a significant blow to her career, but she focused on her personal recovery. She sought therapy to address the emotional impact of the scandal and worked on rebuilding her life away from the public eye. Littleton, too, began the healing process, trying to regain a sense of normalcy despite the lasting effects of the case on the community. The tragedy and its aftermath left a deep mark on both the Engelbert family and the town, but time and support helped in the gradual process of moving forward. The memorials and support events organized by the Littleton community provided a space for healing and reflection. They honored Richard Engelbert's memory and offered support to those affected by the crime. These events helped to bring the community together, allowing them to confront the hidden struggles revealed by the case. As life in Littleton gradually returned to normal, the story of Richard's murder and its aftermath became a poignant reminder of how deeply betrayal and violence can affect both individuals and entire communities. Thank you for sharing the detailed story. It's a powerful example of how hidden lives and personal struggles can lead to tragic outcomes. If you have any more cases or topics you'd like to explore, feel free to reach out. Looking forward to it. Until next time.